You'll notice that halfway through that set, we decided it was important to Mike Rose's feet because she was standing on her feet so
Yeah, good work, good work. I feel like I'm in Canada right now. This feels like some of the little halls, if anyone's ever been to like PEI or any of those places. Nova Scotia, they have these like little town halls.
Church halls.
Yeah, this is so cool. Love it. So I have to say, we are very, very, very happy to be standing up right now. 2 days ago, we were in the middle of Illinois, and we did not fly there.
The town of Normal, Illinois.
Which is anything but normal.
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, we drove all the way home to PA from Indianapolis yesterday and then all the way here today. And we're going all the way back to PA tomorrow. I think we calculated it's about 40 hours of driving this week.
Yeah, a little insane last night.
A little bit, yeah. We're probably going to make a lot of jokes that don't land.
Yeah.
That make perfect sense to us and then nobody else is where we're at.
We'll get it though, it's fine.
So we released an album back in October and it's called Folk Hero. And in true 2022 fashion, 2 of the songs on our album were inspired by episodes of true crime podcasts. Which is how folk musicians find their stories nowadays. And there's a podcast called Criminal with Phoebe Judge, and there's an episode of Criminal called Bully, and it tells the story of a man named Ken Rex McElroy, who was the worst bully you can imagine in a small town called Skidmore, Missouri. Some of you may have heard this story, because it's a pretty wild story. He was the kind of guy, he was arrested over the course of 30 years. He was arrested 22 times. And they never managed to get any charges to stick, and he never did any serious jail time because he would do things like find out who was going to be on the jury at his upcoming trial and burn their houses down and intimidate people to the point where no one would really hold him accountable. So he kind of just did whatever he wanted for 3 decades. And then, oh yeah? Is he here?
Really?
Everyone in the room is nodding, so I feel like we might have to write a sequel to this song.
Well, you guys will have to fill us in on the show. That's fun.
So, the rest of the story just started feeling darker. So eventually, Ken Rex, he went to the one and only bar in the town of Skidmore at the time, which is called the D&G, and he brought his gun with him, and he got into an altercation with somebody at the bar, and he shot the guy in front of all kinds of people. And everyone in town knew that he wasn't going to be held accountable again. So they went and they held a town meeting in a hall probably no bigger than this one, and closed the doors. When they came out, the only cop in the county was called away to the other side of the county on unrelated business. And between 40 and 60 people, depending on who you ask, swarmed out of the town hall, surrounded Ken Rex, and at least 2 people shot him. And they just left him sitting in his truck. And nobody called an ambulance, and they all just dispersed back to their homes. And that was the end of Ken Rex. And the reason the story is amazing isn't the vigilante justice aspect of it. This happened 40 years ago in 1981 or 1982, and in the 40 years since, I mean, everybody in 3 counties knows who pulled the trigger, but no charges have ever been laid because nobody's broken the silence. So, hopefully this local story does not end the same way. But just know that if you're the guy mowing your lawn at 6 a.m. on a holiday, your neighbors are talking about you. You never know what's going to happen. So this is called The Bully of Skidmore Town. in a tight knit town. 40 years of quiet prayers and solemn demise. 40 people saw, but not a single shooter named. No one sheds a tear the day when he dies. Oh, broken bones and blackened eyes. Oh, broken promises and lies. Oh, for they gave us up their town. They found the skateboard for me and they bring him down in broad daylight. So cold, so still. Not one soul love it.
So we were wondering today, we were driving in the car and we decided to pass pretty much all of the time by going back and forth between the three of us playing Guilty Pleasures.
On Spotify.
It got more and more embarrassing as we went. And then we realized, like, are there guilty pleasures from the 60s and 70s? Like, does that exist in that era? I feel like you guys would know the answer. But seriously, like,
wow, how to lose a room all in one go.
We love music from the 60s and 70s. Like, it's truly some of our favorite music.
So you're wondering, is there like a Beatles song that would have been considered a guilty pleasure?
For example, today in the car, we played Korn, Justin Bieber, Michelle Branch. It got weird. It got weird. And so we're getting more and more embarrassed as we're going through, and I was like, all right, put on this Kesha song. And Brian's looking at me like, who are you? Like, what is happening?
70s would be ABBA.
Was ABBA a guilty pleasure?
Or just all the disco, sure, Bee Gees. Okay.
Really? Okay, so that would be like a little embarrassing. So it wasn't. Okay.
Bubblegum pop.
Yeah.
Like bubblegum pop. Okay.
Animals. Lime in the coconut.
What? Lime in the coconut? Yeah. That's my mom, by the way. I was just wondering, because like all of our favorite music is from that era, and I'm like, I can't think of a bad song. I mean, granted, we weren't listening to like all the B-sides, but
That's the thing, right? Is the songs that we know are the ones that became
that's
famous.
fair. That's fair.
How about yummy, yummy, yummy?
See-
Hey, I love that song.
This is what we're talking about. Thank you.
How dare
Okay.
you? Yeah, that's true. I got you.
Itsy.
That's a great song. I will defend this to the death. Wow, you're just.
Itsy Bitsy Teeny Weeny, maybe?
Oh, they're gonna say it's Bitsy Spider.
Itsy Bitsy Spider also. That's a
Love that.
slapper.
It's a
That's a
banger,
banging
yeah.
track.
All right. Well, give us your best guilty pleasures during the intermission. I'm curious.
Yeah, okay.
Those are some good ones. Okay. All right. We feel better now. What are we doing? Snake oil?
Yeah, another song that seems to have a vigilante justice bent to it, but I promise that wasn't intentional.
Yeah. Well.
This song is dedicated to the distributors of hydroxychloroquine. This is called Snake Oil. There was a rich man who walked on water, who ran the seas from into India. They said he'd free the land from silent winter, and he could turn lead into gold. In the village, he sold his potions to cure disease and fight hysteria. We believe what he was selling would be the answer to all of our prayers. Down on our knees, he will answer our prayers. And in the village, the wells were empty. We'd sweat all day, but nothing grew. As our bodies baked under a heartless sun, we would wait for salvation to come. But the rich man, he just kept preaching about the world just beyond our walls. We'd be deceived, demanding how could he be the answer to all of our prayers? How could this man answer all of our prayers? By early August, the crop was wasted, and so we seized our destiny. And we dragged him to a barren riverbed where we lashed him secure to a tree. And in the morning, the heavens opened, the rain came down, he was washed away, and we were free, no longer powerless. We answered all of our prayers. We found the answer to all of our prayers, and we were the answer to all of our prayers. I was joking, by the way. We actually wrote that song, I think, in 2017. So
Yeah.
it's sad when a song that you write becomes more appropriate as the time goes on.
Yeah. So this is a song that we wrote really early on in the pandemic. I think like late February of 2020 is when we finished the song. And it's also on our new album. This is called Ladder to the Sun.
Quietly he walks through the door. Will he know her anymore? Vines growing over, shadows where the photos used to be, like distant memories, shoulder to shoulder, like a ladder to the sun, a letter to no one, holding back the endless sea, running through the trees, coming back to see her once again, sitting on the floor where he slept, uneven and unswept, vines growing over. None of that was part of any plan, but in his heart he understands they're getting older, like a ladder to the sun, a letter to no one, holding back the endless sea, running through the trees, coming back to see her once again. In his mind she'll always be home, and he's not alone. Carefully he steps in the bath, he can almost hear her laugh, vines growing over. All of that is well in the past, it was never built to last, but still he knows her, like a ladder to the sun, a letter to no one, holding back the endless sea, running through the trees, coming back to see her once again. In his mind she'll always be home, and he's not alone.
So I'm just realizing this is another song about vigilante justice, but I swear that's not our brand at all. But to be fair, this is one of the child ballads. So if anyone's familiar with the child ballads, you know that there's a lot of vigilante justice in them. So for those of you who don't know, there was a man named Francis Child who collected about 300 ballads a couple hundred years ago, and they don't really know why he collected the ballads that he did, but he liked all of the really dark themes. So there was a lot of death and dying alone in the woods and being changed into a fairy and then dying alone in the woods, just crazy stuff happening.
HBO stuff.
Yeah. But out of these 305 ballads, there's approximately 4 where the woman makes it to the end of the song alive. And this is actually one of them. And this is a song called William Taylor. And it's about a woman named Sarah who falls in love with William Taylor. And he goes off to war, and she's sitting at home and she's pining for him, as women did back then, I guess. And she decides to dress up like a soldier, and she goes after William. And eventually it's found out that she's a woman, as often happens in these songs. And so the captain is asking why she's there. And she says, I'm looking for William Taylor because he's the love of my life. And the captain says, I know William Taylor because he just got married to the richest woman in town. I know, drama. So I'll let you guys see what happens to William Taylor.
That's called a trailer.
Teaser trailer.
4, 1, 2.
William Taylor, enlisted in the army, is gone away. He's gone and left his own true love alone today. Sarah dressed herself in soldier's clothing, boots and pistol on. She's off to find her own true love. To find him she is gone, far away from home, to the world beyond. The captain came to her, knowing of a secret, asked what brought her here. I've come to find my own true love. Is William Taylor near? William Taylor, if he's the soldier from town of Litchfield, no I fear. He's gone and wed a lady worth 10,000 pounds a year. Oh. Comes for you. She woke early, rising just before the dawning of the day, and she saw William Taylor with his lady Diddy Lay, and with her pistol, a pistol that was brought to her at her command, she shot William Taylor with his lady by his hand. Oh. Go on, William, run away and hide your lying heart. 10 million miles are still too few. And Sarah comes for you. The captain came to her, thoroughly impressed at all that she had done. He made her commander of a ship and all its men, and never would she speak William Taylor's name again. Sarah comes for you. Oh, now that Sarah's come for you. Thank you very much. I wouldn't necessarily say that there's a moral to many of the child ballads. Really. We played that song at a concert series that was put on by a Catholic university in Maryland about a month and a half ago or so. And we, right at the moment in the song where Sarah pulls the gun and shoots William Taylor, there was two nice old ladies sitting in the front who high-fived each other. And they came to talk to us at our merchandise table after the set, and it turns out they were nuns. So there's an origin story there somewhere, I think. We were too afraid to ask.
That's amazing. So most of the songs that we've played so far are from our new album, and I should mention that we recorded that album very close to here in West Springfield, which is really, really cool. There's for those of you who know, there's like a beautiful white church that's been converted into a recording studio called Ghost Hit, and we were lucky enough to spend about 2 weeks there recording. When we first pulled up, we were a little freaked out because we showed up in a thunderstorm at about 1 a.m. And on the bottom floor of the recording studio is an Airbnb where the artists can stay throughout the week and then go upstairs and record all week. And when we pulled up, we were the only ones that were going to be in the building, so they left us a key. It's pouring down rain, it's thundering and lightning, and it's super freaky. And we get inside the house, and I don't know what happened, but we started saying like all the horror movie cliches. Like legit, we got to the door and we were about to walk in and Brian goes, I think I forgot something in the car. I'm gonna go back. I'll meet up with you guys.
Which was parked in the graveyard.
Yeah, swear to you. And I was like, okay, cool, see you in a bit.
I'm like whistling, walking back to the van, and suddenly it occurs to me.
Caroline and I are walking in, we're like throwing our stuff down. I'm like, wow, what a cool space. I wonder if our bedroom faces the graveyard. I'm like looking out the window, and I swear to you, I looked out the window and lightning struck at that exact moment and lit up the street names, which are Elm Street and Witch Path. We were kind of looked at each other, we're like, we're gonna die here. We're gonna die, it's fine.
And then we split up.
Yeah. So amazing. But yeah, that's an amazing recording studio. It was a glorious couple of weeks.
We're going to, this is somewhat appropriate, we're going to play one more song, take a break, and apparently we're all going to go outside, eat watermelon, and watch the bats fly out of the belfry.
I love this. This is the quaintest thing in the entire world.
I've been trying, ever since we heard this, to think of the appropriate Gallagher joke to make about bats and watermelons, and I haven't come up with one yet, so if anybody's got a good idea.
We'll get there. Anyway. So this is actually one from our last album, March Through Storms, and this is a song by a man named Ed Pickford, and with a tune thrown in by Liz Carroll, who has played here, yeah. Big fan of hers. So this is Pound a Week Rise. Thank you guys. We're going to take a short break, and then we'll be back up. 1, 2, 3.
From Teesdale to Tyne, I'll sing you a song of a pound a week rise and the men who are fooled by the government's lies. And it's down to go down the low jack when never see the sky. And you're working in a dungeon for a pound a week rise. In 1960, just a few years ago, the mine workers laid us to Lord Robins did go. Saying we work very hard and every day our lives, and we ask you here and now for a pound a week rise. It's down to go down below jack where you never see the sky. And you're working in a dungeon for a pound a week rise. When I spoke Lord Robins and you made this decree, when the upward rises, and with you I will agree to raise up all your wages, to give you fair pay. For I was once a miner, and I worked hard in my day. It's down you go, down below jack, where you never see the sky. And you're working in a dungeon for a pound a week rise. pound. He wouldn't give 10 bob, he gave them 7 and 6 and said, get back to your jobs. So come on, you colliers, take it what I say. And don't believe a cowboy when they say you'll get fair pay. Cause they'll tell you to run, used to make the upward rise. You'll get high in the sky instead of a 1 pound rise. And it's down you go, down below Jack, where you never see the sky. And you're working in a dungeon for a pound a week rise. And it's down you go, down below Jack, where you never see the sky. And you're working in a dungeon for a pound a week rise.
We just got put on the bill for the
Glasgowland
Oh, sorry.
Scottish Festival at Look Park.
yes, which is very nearby. Which is not this coming weekend, but the weekend after. And Brian's band, Enter the Haggis, is going to be playing there as well. And there are some pamphlets out there if you want to grab it and make sure you remember the date. But we're going to be back in the area in like a week and a half, which is awesome.
Yep.
So anyway, go for it, Luke Watermelon. We'll get back. Thank you, guys. I was informed that there was a daddy long leg that came down in front of my face during the show. So if you guys see it, I would like you to tell
Pretend
me
not to see it.
so that I don't burn the chapel down. All right, do it.
So when you write original Irish and Celtic tunes, you have to come up with names for them. And eventually you run out of variations on Trip to Galway and Lakes of Killarney. So this is called the Sneezing Loon.
introduction. This is Caroline Browning on the bass here. All the way from Asheville, North Carolina. And she doesn't talk on the mic much, but she's actually very funny. Believe it or not. She's just like a mic was saying. Caroline hates this story, but we actually met Caroline very at random in 2018. Brian and I were slotted to play a festival in Fort Collins, Colorado. And at the time, we were doing more of a rock band sound, and so we hired 2 members from Brian's band, Enter the Haggis, to come out and join us on bass and drums. And we were supposed to be like the big closing band for this festival. And this festival was nothing short of a disaster. In so many ways, which we won't even get into. But so we were slotted to play, and at the last minute, both Mark and Bruce had their flights canceled from different places because of like fog, like very randomly. And we were freaking out a little bit because we were just now going to be an acoustic duo as the closing band of this festival.
After rock bands. Like,
after rock
we're
bands,
just gonna walk out and folk the place up.
Yeah. So we went up to the festival organizer and we told him, you know, if you want to move us earlier in the day, it might make more sense because we're not going to be this big rock band for the end of the night. And he looked at us kind of strangely, and we thought he was going to be like a little upset or freaked out or anxious. And he just goes, Rose, Brian, you guys love each other. You'll figure it out.
Like, we applaud the sentiment for sure.
Like, what are you talking about? So we just stared at him, and then he walked away. We went, what? Didn't know what that meant, but
like love conquers all, but quietly.
Yeah. So Brian went on Facebook and asked if anyone knew a bassist in the state of Colorado, which in retrospect is hilarious. It's not a small
don't hire
state.
via Facebook message. It's not. Well, it worked out for us. So.
Yeah, and so Caroline's mother-in-law answered Brian's message and said, my daughter-in-law lives in Golden, Colorado, and here's her email address. Wow. And we couldn't find any videos of Caroline. There was one of her, I think, playing in a bar.
Terrible self-promotion.
Terrible self-promotion. She's playing in a bar. You obviously can't hear the bass through computer speakers, but she was holding it right.
We could see, she had a bass.
And she was kind of just like rocking out and looking chill, and I'm like, oh, she looks cool.
So we hired her, and that's like 4 years ago now.
Yeah, it worked out for us.
That video got you the gig.
Also, we got exceptionally lucky. Most of the time, you do not want to hire people through Facebook. That was very lucky. But so this is a brand new song for us that we're currently calling Shine. It's a working title.
We're probably going to change the name because every band has a song called Shine.
I know, it's true. And this song ended up being way more appropriate with the recent Supreme Court decision. So we're going to dedicate this to the women of the U.S. This is called Shine.
1, 2, 1.
They're all looking through jigs as well. And I guess it's not a working title anymore. I think we've
I guess we're
solidified
gonna,
it.
yeah.
This is the Stone, the Feather, and the Waltzing Mouse. And the title for this actually came from the Burn in Boston, if anyone's been to that venue before. Yeah, it's a great place. And we played there, I think, back in February, and we were sitting downstairs in the green room, eating like the pub food. We were having like burgers and fries and whatever. And the only thing in the green room, besides our food and some chairs, was a tarot deck, which none of us have any experience
Illustrated by
with.
Edward Gorey, if anybody knows. Yeah, it was actually really cool.
It was cool, but none of us have any experience with that. But I decided to draw 3 cards and figure it out later. And so I did, and I got the Stone, the Feather, and the Waltzing Mouse. And on the back of the card are a bunch of words, I guess you can use to like interpret your meaning. But the first one on all of the cards, I had small intestine, large intestine, and then distress.
So we stopped eating.
Immediately, yeah. It's very upsetting.
Everything turned out okay.
I think it saved us.
And I
really.
think we played this set of tunes for the first time that night, and so we decided to name it in honor of that experience. But small intestine, large intestine, distress isn't as good a name for a
Not
set
quite.
of tunes
No.
as the Stone, the Feather, and the Waltzing Mouse.
Agreed.
It's not without its charm.
Sure, yeah. Jen quits. She's done. Over it. So a few years ago, Brian and I started releasing these all violin covers that we did just for fun. And I think this was maybe the third one that we did. After Bohemian Rhapsody almost ended our marriage, we decided to go simple again. So,
Yeah, we had the bright idea of doing an all violin cover of every note of Bohemian Rhapsody. So like every instrument, every drum, all the vocal layers. We found sheet music, and it was 33 pages long.
if we can survive that, we can survive anything.
If you ever go back and watch the video on YouTube, you can just see it in our eyes. Neither of us is happy.
We're just dead inside, yeah.
But we're getting it done.
But this is a much simpler and more fun one to do. And we really wanted to release a music video with the song because it's such a beautiful song. And we decided to rent out, there's this old abandoned school in Shenandoah, Pennsylvania. It was called the J.W. Cooper School, if anyone knows where that is. And unfortunately, it's fallen into crazy disrepair. It's an absolute mess. And a gentleman bought it, and he was trying to fix it up and turn it into a community center, which is admirable because this place looks like it should be condemned. But he let us have the run of the place for a day. We rented it, and he said we were the first band to rent it that wasn't a heavy metal band, which we thought was adorable. So yeah, it was really, really fun, and we recorded a video there. You can see it on YouTube.
Let me just double check that, sorry.
I will say that the school was also used as a morgue during the Spanish War.
Spanish flu.
Spanish flu, yeah. So it's it was a pretty creepy place. What made you come back? You should just stay out there.
So here's the other song inspired by a true crime podcast. It's not really a true crime podcast. It's a podcast called In the Dark, which is put together by APM Reports. And it's the kind of podcast where every season they do a deep dive on some injustice in America. And the second season of In the Dark focused on the story of a man named Curtis Flowers, who you may have heard of. He was in the news last year. Curtis holds the distinction of being the only American ever tried 6 times for the same crime. And that sounds crazy, and it is. The only way that can happen to you is, in Curtis's case at least, he was railroaded into prison for a quadruple murder. He was sent to death row by a racist prosecutor named Doug Evans, who, as far as I know, still has his job, unless he's resigned since all the bad press came out, in the town of Winona, Mississippi. It was an election year, and Doug's job, as many jobs in the American justice system or legal system, is an elected position in Winona, Mississippi, and he knew that the people in town were very unnerved by the fact in this little tiny community that there had been a quadruple murder and they didn't know who had done it. And so he felt a lot of pressure to put somebody in prison. And once he put Curtis in prison on very flimsy evidence and coerced testimony from supposed eyewitnesses, Curtis, he was convicted, and then he appealed the conviction, and it went up to the next level of courts, and the conviction was overturned on the basis of prosecutorial misconduct. Now, you would think that if a conviction is overturned because of prosecutorial misconduct, that prosecutor wouldn't be able to try the case again, but that's not so. That's not how it works. And you're not just released from prison when your conviction is overturned. You're sent back to jail to wait the decision as to whether or not the prosecution wants to retry the case. Because you haven't technically been acquitted, you've no longer been convicted, and so they keep you behind bars while they make the decision. And this happened to Curtis 6 times over the course of 23 years. I think it was 4 overturned convictions and 2 mistrials hung juries. And eventually, finally, this podcast, In the Dark, got wind of the story through one of the listeners, and they sent some journalists down to Winona for the better part of 2 years, where they interviewed everybody in the county, managed to get a lot of the eyewitnesses to recant their testimony on tape, and found a bunch of exculpatory evidence that had been uncovered in the original trial but was never brought to the defense, and so they never had it at their disposal. And Curtis's final appeal went all the way to the Supreme Court of the United States, where it was actually Brett Kavanaugh who wrote the opinion in the majority, upholding the overturned conviction, and finally, after 23 years, setting Curtis free. So he's a free man today. It's not a happy ending to a story because there's no way to get those 23 years back, but it does definitely shine a light on the fact that free press and independent journalism is very, very important, especially when it's done well. So we were so impressed that we wrote a song and we named it after the podcast. This is called In the Dark. Okay. Shots like the winter's grip, shots like a lashing whip, tore through Winona one morning in July. Fear in their hearts and eyes, fear's where the money lies. Those bearing witness sold their honor for a fee. Heaven's a southern sun, heaven's a pointed one, locked flowers in the dark and threw away the key. There's no answer, but still they try to find guilty and innocent as illuminate a life inside of flowers will die. Crooked before a trial, crooked one's a little bit different. This is on our new album too. This is called Stone Row. Okay. Never gonna-
Well, this is a song we really wish that we wrote and is not a guilty pleasure.
but not in the least. No. Probably the best place I can imagine to play.
Mm-hmm.
Catch your breath.
Helplessly hoping her harlequin hovers nearby, awaiting a word, gasping at glimpses of gentle true spirit. He runs, wishing he could fly, only to trip at the sound of goodbye. to tell you, confusion has its cost. Love isn't lying, it's loose in a lady who lingers, saying she is lost and choking on a low. They are one person, they are two alone, they are three together, they are four for each other.
Thank you so much.
Thank you guys so much. So it's been really, really great traveling again. It's been a long couple of years not playing music, so it's great to be back in full force. And we were actually reminiscing recently on all of our travels before the pandemic, because we had been kind of all over the place. And the last big trip that Brian and I took together before the pandemic was we went to Ireland, which was really fun. And from there, we skirted down to Portugal, because we'd never been there before. And the other guy in Brian's band, Trevor, had just been to Portugal right before Ireland, so he did like the opposite trip of us. So we were kind of picking his brain and like, you know, asking him what they did and what we should do, and talking to him, and he goes, so how are you guys like getting around? Like, did you rent a car? Are you doing buses? And we're like, no, we rented a car, so that'll be good. And he's like, oh, sweet, like which one of you drives stick? And I was like, neither of us drive stick. No, we rented an automatic. And he's like, I don't think
They don't
rent
rent
automatics.
automatic cars in Portugal.
And we're like, no, I'm pretty sure they do. I don't think I would have rented like a manual car.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what we did.
Yeah, we did. We rented a manual car.
And now I had never, all growing up, like the car that I learned to drive in like one of those land yachts, like a Lincoln Continental, one of the giant, but it was automatic. And then my mom had a Corolla that was an automatic, so I'd never driven stick at all.
Yeah.
Rose had one lesson in a Walmart parking lot in her mom's Mini Cooper.
Yeah, parking lot. Yeah. Yep, she gave me a 1 hour lesson.
So of the two of us, Rose was much more experienced.
Obviously. And I think I lost my mind. I don't know what happened. I had
She was
this.
so confident.
I was so confident. I had this like false sense of confidence where at first we were freaking out, and then I was like, you know what? I'll be fine. I think it'll just be like come back to me like riding a bicycle. This is like 15 years later. And I was like, no, it'll be fine.
Very confident.
So we get
Very
there.
false.
So
As it turned
we
out.
get there, and the car's in Brian's name, and I'm not supposed to be driving it.
Right.
So the woman walks us out to our car and like watches us get in. It's very strange.
She's like standing there waiting for us to pull out of the garage, and I'm sitting in the driver's seat, and Rose is sitting in the passenger seat, and we're just waiting for her to leave. So I'm like checking the mirrors, rechecking the mirrors.
Brian?
I got the owner's manual out, which was in Portuguese, and I'm like, better make sure I know everything there is to know about this car before we start driving.
So finally, I think she got bored of you pretending to read, and she left. And then we very quickly switched places. And I put it in reverse, and I stalled. And I was like, oh, it's fine, it's fine. And so I got it back into reverse, stalled again. I was like, it's fine. And so finally, I reversed it enough like this to get it out of the spot. And then I put it in drive, and I stalled like 4 more times. But then what I had to do to leave the garage was, so it was 10 p.m. at night, it was dark. And we were in this underground garage. We had to go up a very steep ramp. And I made it to the top, I think, in first gear.
I was just hearing the roller coaster noise, and we got to the top and exited directly into a 5-lane roundabout with stoplights at every intersection. Completely packed with cars at 10 o'clock at night.
Not good, yeah.
Not great.
So, yeah, the first 2 lights, I stalled out, of course, and I have all these, like, Portuguese people yelling at me in Portuguese and honking their horn, and I'm getting extremely stressed out. And so after maybe, like, 2 or 3 times where this happened, because, like, our GPS isn't loaded yet, because we were underground, we didn't have service, and Brian's like, I'm like, can you please find our Airbnb? I'm freaking out. And so Brian finally gets the address put in there, and I've gone around this roundabout like 4 or 5 times now.
Well, the thing is, her problem-solving skills kicked in, and she's like, the lights aren't going well, so we're just going to ignore the fact that there are lights. Which is
so-
fine. Everybody's traveling in the same general direction. We were on the inside loop, so we just kind of built up our momentum so we could slingshot ourselves around the moon.
Yeah. So we finally got out of there. I got it into 5th gear, and I said, I'm not leaving this gear until we get there.
Yeah, made for some pretty exciting toll booths.
Yeah. So we finally got to our destination, and of course, we pull up. It's very dark. It's very late. We pull up, and I missed the entrance. I was on a one-way street, and I missed the entrance to our Airbnb. And so I was just like, okay, I'll make the next left that I possibly can, and then I'll like back up and maneuver into the spot. And instead, the next entrance was a very steep ramp downwards, going into a closed private parking garage that I couldn't get into. Because
And
you
as soon
needed
as
a
she
fob.
turned in and like slammed on the brakes halfway down this ramp, 2 cars pulled in behind her
Because
on the
of
ramp.
course. Yeah, it's like when you finally decide to turn around in someone's like driveway.
You're always home.
And they're behind you.
Oh,
no,
yeah. Oh,
it
yeah.
happens to me all the time.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, so I'm like stopped on this ramp, and then people are yelling at me in Portuguese, and everyone's like telling me to go, but I can't because it's like a private.
It's my job to get out of the car and go and try and convince these people in zero Portuguese that even though it's midnight, they can't go home right now. They have to go somewhere else for a few minutes.
Yeah.
So they did finally back out. I don't know where they went because they
Yeah,
never
I
came
don't know.
back.
They backed out, and yeah, I finally backed out of there. It
And
took a very long
The
time.
thing is, it was like a horror movie because every time she decided she was going to go for it, she would like start the car, put it in gear, fall another foot towards the doors, stall, and slam the brakes on. And this happened 3 or 4 times, just getting closer and closer. But then, like the rock star she is, she did get it into reverse and, I mean, probably got air leaving this
Yeah.
ramp out onto the road.
Yeah,
She
finally
pulled
got-
into the next driveway, which was a parking lot, put the windows down, threw the keys at me out the window, and said, "I'm never driving this car again. It's your problem now." Which was, it was fair. But we were in Porto, and we rented the car in Lisbon, so the car had to get back to Lisbon somehow. Which is how I wound up on internet forums looking for someone who needed to get to Lisbon from Porto and could drive stick. And that's how we met Leandro, a 17-year-old Portuguese college student who agreed to take a bus from Lisbon to Porto to visit his brother, meet us, and then drive us the 3.5 hours back to Lisbon in our rental car.
Yeah, we were telling everyone our location, like, this guy's gonna be a serial killer. He's gonna end up being some,
And he
like,
was probably doing the
50-year-old
exact
guy.
same thing.
He was probably freaked out too, yeah. But we met him, and he was like, seriously, there was no facial hair yet. He had a backwards baseball cap on, and he was like, sure, I'll drive you. We're like, okay. And we listened to techno for 3 hours. Yeah, we finally got to our the gas station where we were supposed to drop off the car. And we were so stressed out and nervous about meeting the guy, hoping he wouldn't notice that there was like a Portuguese child driving us back, that we ended up, we pumped the car full of gas, and the guy dropped us off at the airport, and we realized on the way, like we were going down this escalator, and I was like, did you pay for the gas? And Brent's like, no, did you pay for the gas? And I was like,
No, we stole a tank of Portuguese gasoline. So we can't go back to Portugal, basically.
But you should. It's a
You
gorgeous
should, gorgeous
country.
place. As long as you can drive stick, you'll be fine.
Yeah,
This is
yeah.
true. This is true.
Well, we're gonna leave you guys with one more. This is a Scottish song. We want to thank Paul so much for having us, and Claudia, thank you guys so much for having us. I don't know where you are back there,
Whoever grew the watermelons, thank you, that person.
Thank you guys. This is such a cool special concert series that
There's
you guys
lots
have
of
here.
great music coming here too. Alistair
Yes.
Fraser and Natalie Haas are
Oh
going to
my
be
gosh.
here, and they're incredible.
Hanukkah Castle is
Hanukkah
amazing.
Castle is incredible.
So yeah, please come back, and we're gonna be here in a week and a half, which is
yeah.
wild.
Yeah, so see you.
Hopefully we'll see you guys at the Glasgow Lands Scottish Festival. But we're gonna leave you with a Scottish song, which is perfect. This is a song called Johnny Cope. Thank you guys so much.
Cope sent a message from Dunbar. Charlie, meet me if you dare, and I'll teach
gathered from the sand, follow me. My brave young man and good Johnny go up in the morning. Hey Johnny go, by you walking yet? Orion drums are beating yet. If you were walking, I would wait to go to the goals in the morning. Johnny be as good as your word and meet me here with fire and sword, and don't you run like a frightened bird that flies to his nest in the morning. When Johnny Cole he heard of this, he thought he wouldn't be amiss to have his horse in readiness to fly away in the morning. Hey Johnny go, by you walking yet? Or are your drums are beating yet? If you were walking, I would wait to go to the goals in the morning. Flying out, Johnny, get up and run. The drums of war beat such a sound. It's best to wait in your own all skin.